Just as Vincent was about to open the door out of the briefing room, he stopped and looked down over his suit. "Ah, shit," he muttered, and wiped away blood where he found it, only to realize it was getting on the gloves of the suit. The material could camouflage. The blood couldn't. He let out a sigh and looked around the briefing room and saw two doors in the back. The first one he checked led into a supply closet, while the other was some sort of small back hallway. He slipped down that way, hand on the hilt of his knife. He was still fairly well disguised, but the blood would draw attention if someone was paying attention. The rooms connected to the hall seemed to be offices, that were thankfully empty, as Vincent checked in on them. Finally, he found one that had another door at the back. It was fairly bland and nondescript, as far as he could tell. No diploma or pictures of the family, something he'd expect from the Yervesh. Or a video game that didn't believe in making realistic interiors. But the door at the back thankfully led to a private bathroom. He closed the door behind him and turned off the active camo so he could see what he was doing. Then he turned on the water to begin washing his hands off. It was a bit more difficult to try and wash off the torso area, but he managed as he started getting the hand towels wet and using them to wipe the blood off. He was almost finished when the door suddenly opened up, and he looked to his side, only to see a very surprised Zeno. It was a Buborgi, which always looked to him like someone stuck the head of a horned owl onto the body of a beaver and made it roughly person-sized. He had a mop in one hand and a janitor's cart behind him. He looked at Vincent with wide eyes, clearly surprised, and for a moment twitched back towards the other door. "Ah," Vincent warned quickly. "If you run, I have to kill you." With that, the Xeno froze in place, and his eyes got even wider than before. Vincent looked back down at his suit and kept wiping away the blood. There was a patch of it, though, that just kept getting smeared around rather than removed. "Got anything for stains on sensitive surfaces?" he asked and looked at the janitor, who blinked. You're allowed to move. Just don't run away," Vincent said, which prompted the Xeno to turn around and pick up a bottle from his cart before handing it to Vincent. Vincent squirted some of the liquid on the suit and found the blood came right off. That done, he reactivated the camo and found himself to essentially vanish. "Good thing this isn't dry clean only, eh?" He laughed as the Xeno just gulped nervously. I swear I was just going to clean this bathroom out. That's it," the Xeno replied, not joining in Vincent's sense of humor. "You're in a secret and secure section of a massive estate. You sure you're not part of all this?" Vincent waved a hand at the room around him, only to realize the Xeno wouldn't be able to see it. "Why would they give you access if you aren't one of them?" he finished instead. "Someone's gotta clean," the Xeno said and shifted his mop a bit. "True enough. Tell you what. You leave and tell them you feel sick and go home. You don't tell them you saw me, and you start looking for a new job." He handed the bottle back to the Xeno. "That sound green?" The Xeno nodded emphatically. Green!" "Then we're green." Vincent patted the janitor's shoulder, only to have the Xeno gasp and jerk away in surprise. It was hard for him to get used to being essentially invisible. "Just step aside." The janitor quickly moved away from the door, and Vincent stepped through, but as he got to the hall, he turned back. "And just remember, if you feel like warning someone, then I can see you, but you can't see me." He walked down the hall and ducked into another office, watching the janitor slowly peek his head out from the other office, and then quickly walk down away from the briefing room. As he passed the office Vincent was in, the Xeno muttered, "Don't get paid nearly enough for this shit." Once he was gone, Vincent actually started reading the nameplates on the offices, and then found one down a second hallway that read, Jormak, Chief of Security. There was a good chance he could find out where the preacher was if he asked this particular evil goon a few pointed questions. The door was closed, so Vincent tugged the knife from its sheath gently, and then very slowly turned the knob and started to open the door, trying to get a sense of what waited for him inside. He could hear soft talking, but couldn't make out what was being said. It didn't seem like the Xeno inside had noticed the door yet. Vincent paused, weighing his options for a moment, and then kept slowly inching the door open, just wide enough to slip inside, and then slowly close it behind him. Once he was inside, he could see this office was very different from the others. There were pictures of a howler on the walls, only this howler seemed to have a family. He noticed the picture of a big grinning male and a female, with 2 little ones. Then he saw pictures of the younger ones with the female, and some of the younger ones alone, but he didn't see the male in the pictures again, right up until he moved around the desk and saw the male sitting in his chair, leaning over a tablet open to some sort of shopping site. So, you already had a chance to see them at the zoo with your friends, huh? What did you think? So you still like them? That's cool. Oh, so he got you that from the gift shop. The Xeno crossed out an item on the tablet. Vincent began to feel uneasy as he listened in on the conversation the Xeno was having, with what looked to be his kid on the other end of the comm the Howler had in his ear. How's the slam ball going? I know I promised to come see more games, but... Oh, uh-huh. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. She didn't tell me. The Xeno crossed out several items. Well, at least you had fun with Jiren last week, yeah? Yeah, I hope so. I had them set all that up special for you. Yeah, I wish I could have been there too. Yeah. No! Vincent could see the Xeno's expressions as he spoke on the comm. He sounded quite happy. No way! Well, I look forward to seeing it mounted on your wall. What? They didn't let you keep it? You go back there and carry it home yourself. He laughed at whatever the reply was. All right, so you enjoyed it, yeah? I'm really glad to hear it, bud. Could you put your sister on the phone? As he seemed to wait on the comm, he circled an item on his tablet and nodded. Then he changed the page he was looking at to a whole new page of items that Vincent couldn't make out. At some point, the other person must have got on, because the Xeno picked up. Hey, sweetie! I know it's been forever since we spoke. Yeah, did you? That's great! Vincent couldn't take the Xeno out while he was on the comm. He was clearly talking to his kids, and what kind of heartless monster would do something like that? Then again, his team was still under fire. He mentally cursed and inched closer to the back of the chair, trying to figure out what course of action to take. The Xeno kept speaking with who Vincent presumed to be his daughter, until he finally circled an item on the tablet. Yeah, would you? Thanks, sweetie. I promise I'll bring you something for my trip. Vincent could see the noticeable change in the Xeno's posture suddenly. Slumped shoulders, down-tilted head, one hand on his forehead. Must be the X. Hey, Faraka. Yeah, I know. Look, work has been really busy lately. I know that. Look, please take them up on the offer. I mean, level 20? That's great, right? No! The Xeno let out a heavy sigh. I swear, I'm not. I work at a university now. If you ever come up, you'd... He got quiet, and then his shoulders seemed to slump further. All right, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get worked up. I'm trying really hard, Firaka. Yeah, is it not enough? I'll send you more. Oh, sorry, I thought... No, I just want to provide. Well, if you let me see them more often, then I wouldn't have to bring presents every time. Well, if you think that makes them think of you as the evil one, then whose fault is that? Vincent didn't need to hear the other end of the conversation to know the Xeno had just fucked up. The Howler blinked and then set the tablet on his desk before rubbing his face in his hands. I didn't mean that. I didn't. I'm sorry. I just get frustrated. I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. The fight had completely drained out of him. Yes, I agree. I need help, okay? Say goodnight to them for me. The Xeno pulled the combud from his ear and set it on the desk. Vincent had enough time to think about what he needed to do, and compare it with what he wanted to do. He kept the knife in hand and pulled out his magnum before speaking up. Divorce can be rough. Yeah, the Xeno said, and then looked up with a sudden realization. But as he reached for the comm, Vincent jabbed the muzzle of his gun up under the Xeno's chin. No. Lean back. The Howler carefully leaned back in his chair, obviously confused as he was staring at a floating gun. Vincent deactivated the camo for his helmet and saw the fear in the Howler's eyes. The Xeno might be a foot taller and a good 40 kilograms heavier than Vincent, but right now, it wasn't that kind of fight. Vincent reached over, and without bracing the comm unit, he simply cut through it with a single clean swipe from his knife. Now then, where's the preacher? I don't... Vincent jammed the muzzle up into the Xeno's throat under his chin a little harder. He could feel the movement of the Xeno's gulp through his gun. End of the hall. Lift on the left. It takes you to his private residence. Vincent watched him for a moment. And the code? What? He didn't finish the comment as he heard the heavy click of Vincent pulling back on the hammer. 57961. No biometrics. Vincent pulled the gun back. That wasn't so hard, was it? I only asked for a quick death, Shade. The Xeno growled, and for once it sent a pang of guilt through Vincent. You know, my father died when I was young, and I'd hate for that to happen to your own son. The Xeno glanced sidelong at some of the pictures he had. But I don't trust you enough to let you walk out of here. Do you have any cuffs? The Xeno nodded and reached for a drawer. Slowly. The Xeno's hands moved slower as he pulled out a set of bindings. They looked sturdy enough to hold the howler, which was perhaps the point. Got a bathroom? Bathroom? The Xeno asked, clearly confused. Just in there. He nodded to a door past Vincent, so he carefully circled around and kept his eyes on the Xeno before sheathing his knife and opening the door behind him. A quick glance behind him told him it was indeed a bathroom. All right, in there. The Xeno got up, moving slowly as Vincent kept his gun trained on him. Once inside the bathroom, Vincent nodded. On the floor, hands behind the toilet. The Xeno clearly didn't look pleased with the idea. I guess you get to find out how good your janitor is at cleaning. The howler slowly got on the ground, reaching his hands back behind the toilet before binding them together. Vincent kept his gun in hand and reached back to give a tug, making sure they were secure. See, I don't kill everyone. If the patrol catches me in here, I'm fairly sure I'll be going to prison for so long my son will grow up without me. But it was your choice to work for the wrong side. Wrong side? They offered me more credits than I could ever make where I'm from. He wants to give more opportunities to the poor. He's advocating the slaughter of an entire species whose only job is to protect people and enforce the law. You're not working for the good guys. Vincent stressed, before shutting the door to leave the howler inside. He didn't normally spare the enemy, but he didn't feel up to killing the divorced father. Then again, how many young Xenos were missing loved ones because of him already? No, he couldn't think like that because they were criminals. But didn't criminals deserve a chance? Fuck! He growled beneath his breath as he tried to drive the thoughts from his mind. If he got wrapped up in the mental aspect of what he was doing, there was no telling how it would turn out. He needed to focus, so he pictured the preacher spewing all that bullshit to the citizens of the lower city and nodded, reminding himself that his team needed him to end this. Now. He stepped out of the office and reactivated his helmet camo, and holstering the magnum before pulling out his knife. End of the hall, lift on the left. He turned and walked past the office before finding the lift in question. The panel inside had a few options for floors, but one wasn't marked, so he hit that. It asked for a key code and he punched in the one the howler gave him, tensing a little as he did. But the lift started moving up, and it didn't seem like it was a trap. Even so, he didn't drop his guard. When the doors opened, he had to quickly back up as two howlers armed with tie-bar cannons barged into the lift. Vincent could barely avoid them as he squeezed himself into the corner. The fuck? Who entered the code? I told you it was empty when I checked the camera, the second one mentioned. Go check the feed from the hall down below! The lead Xeno growled back to the subordinate, who backed out of the lift. This left Vincent alone with the other Xeno. He watched the tusked ape start to sniff at the air, and his hand tightened around the hilt of his knife. I don't see anything, the other said from outside. Check the heat vision camera! I'm telling you, the Shade is coming for us! If we don't kill him when he shows up, then the boss will kill us instead! You know, there's a third option, Vincent said, and the Xeno's head whipped around, just as Vincent drove his knife into the Xeno's throat with a clean swipe, already pushing past the Xeno even as his blood began to pour out of the wound. The second Xeno looked up from behind a security console of some sort, reaching for the weapon he'd sat down to work the controls. Vincent quickly tossed the knife out, which buried itself in the howler's shoulder, and as he lived up to his name by howling out in pain, Vincent vaulted the console, slamming the Xeno into the wall, before pulling the knife out and quickly driving it up under the guard's chin and straight up into his brain. For a moment, Vincent stood there, holding the Xeno up as he heard the death gurgle of the other howler in the lift. He didn't hear any alarms, or yelling. Carefully, he guided the howler's body to the ground, before pulling the knife free and wiping the blood off of the Xeno's green fur. There was a little voice in his head that asked if they also had families, but he told it to shut up and move down the hall to the nearest corner. He still didn't hear any activity. When he finally looked around the corner, he saw a hallway that looked more like the ones in the public areas of the mansion. These weren't the bare hallways he'd seen in the security section. But where was everyone? He heard some talking coming from a door to the side and squeezed his knife tight. But then the door opened and he saw two of those female bird, elf, Xenos walking out. Were they the same subspecies as the pilots?
Oh, I know. He seems to get so worked up when he's writing a speech. But it's just fantastic how he can whip up a rally on campus, isn't it? Oh, totally. He's very charismatic when he gets going. It's just hard to believe with all this money and a big mansion and all, that he still cares about the lower city. Such dedication. And to be invited up to his private penthouse like this. Such an honor.
They giggled as Vincent frowned. It seemed that Xenos were no less susceptible to demagogues than humans. They walked into another room and out of sight as Vincent shook his head. Was there no communication between citizens in the city? How could no one up here know their vaunted preacher was inciting violence in the streets? Then again, he'd never seen a news program being broadcast before. Did they not have the news? He'd never paid attention because he'd hated watching the news back home on Earth. But to not have any news? He needed to find out. Perhaps security here was light, since this was the preacher's private penthouse. He moved through the halls, not seeing any of the convenient signs that they had placed in the security area. He roamed the corridors for a few minutes, trying to get a sense of the layout without opening any of the closed doors, when he found a pair of the most ridiculous-looking doors he'd ever seen. They were some sort of wood carved with what looked like religious iconography of a deity, only it was clearly the preacher in all of the carvings. Figuring this was the best indicator he had, he opened the door. For a moment, he had to adjust his eyes to the darkness, and his hand went to his knife as he figured it might be a trap. But nothing happened, and he could hear something further in. He kept walking forward as he realized he was in a very dark bedroom. There was a massive four-poster bed, the likes of which he hadn't seen outside of old movies on Earth. And the walls. He realized they were paintings of the preacher everywhere. He could also hear a voice. It was faint, but it was definitely the bastard in question. He looked around for a moment and noticed a statue of the preacher in a little alcove to the right-hand wall. He was striking some sort of noble, or maybe heroic pose, with an outstretched arm. Vincent had a feeling and reached up, pulling on the arm. As he did, it made the other arm rise up, and a section of the wall next to the statue slid away, to reveal another dark section of the mansion. He walked into it, and saw bright lights up ahead with a figure in a chair facing away from him.
All this time, and where is the big, bad shade? The patrol is losing ground. His precious team of traitors is being picked off one by one, and we don't see him anywhere. It's because he's a coward. He's probably pissing himself in a corner out of fear of those who rise against him. If I came down there right now, I bet he'd drop to his knees and beg me for his life.
The Xeno leaned back in his chair in front of the recording equipment and laughed. I doubt it. Vincent deactivated his camo just as he stepped up next to the preacher, forcing his hand into the Xeno's mouth as he gasped in shock, yanking the preacher's tongue out as far as he could, and then cutting it off in a swift slice with his knife. As blood began to gush from the wound, the Xeno clutched at his mouth, howling in pain, before Vincent shoved the chair down, with the preacher in it, and started stabbing the Xeno over and over as he screamed in rage to contrast the Xeno's pain. By the time he was able to stop himself, he was panting, covered in blood, and straddling an unrecognizable corpse. He got up then, turning to find where he dropped the dismembered tongue before holding it up before the cameras. This is the tongue of a traitor. The patrol seeks only to enforce the law and protect all citizens of the Union. That team being attacked by criminals is filled with patriots who want to make a difference. The path to a better society is filled with hard work and cooperation, not killing and robbing your fellow citizens. Citizens of the city, I am the Shade. My vigilance is eternal. He reached out and pushed the clearly marked off button to deactivate the cameras. Once that was done, he let out a heavy sigh and activated his comm. Handler, did you get that? Clear as daylight. Our broadcast has begun. Vincent connected to Frey then. Mama Bull, this is Phoenix. Status? We were getting hit very hard for a moment there, Phoenix. But as soon as you ripped that fucker's tongue out, the attack broke. How is everyone? Almost all of us are wounded at this point. Don't know about Eyes or Gargoyle. We need a medevac priority 1. She sounded excited, but it was tempered with a bit of concern. Handler? Vincent asked. Everything I have in the area is already busy. Best I can do is get your team 2 reserved spots at a hospital on level 28. Shit. Can the sharks pick you up, Mama Bull? Checking. There was a pause. That's affirmative, Phoenix. They're breaking off pursuit. However, without comms with Eyes and Gargoyle, we'd have to leave them behind. Vincent thought it over for a moment. They should be all right on their own for now. If the crowd was only attacking you guys, they might not even know about Eyes and Gargoyle. Get loaded in the sharks and get out. Acknowledged, Phoenix. Mama Bull out. Vincent sighed and hoped he hadn't lost anyone else today. Handler, hi. He heard a crashing noise and looked back up the hall towards the bedroom. The Shade might still be here! Get in there! He didn't have his metal weapon thing on the broadcast! I bet he's only got that knife! We can corner him! Vincent looked down at his blood-covered torso. Fuck. He pulled the Magnum free and took cover behind the recording equipment, hoping the lights might make it hard for the oncoming guards to spot him. Do you have anything in my area, Handler? That's a negative, Creature 88. Phoenix, this is the counselor. He heard Mach speak up. Listen to me very carefully. Have you encountered hostile forces belonging to the tax collectors? Yes. He didn't hesitate. Several attacked me earlier, even after I declared myself a patrol detective. That was mostly a lie, but he had a feeling Mach needed him to say something like that. I'm sending in my security team to assist you. Hang tight. I'll see what I can do. Vincent grumbled as he saw the guards advancing down the hall. He turned on his camo, hoping it might do some good despite the blood all over him. There were advancing satyr and a few howlers. He counted 8 altogether, and he had a 6-shot revolver. Fuck. Normally, he didn't give a shit about survival, but with that data device in his pocket, he couldn't afford to die now. They were walking towards him down the hall when there was an explosion that shook the building. Someone is attacking. They aren't patrol craft, one of the satyrs stated. We need to destroy documents. You have to get revenge later. Oh, the hell we will! I'm tired of taking fucking orders from you parasites! Always too good to work with us! Always bossing us around! We have to avenge the boss right now before the Shade gets away! The Xenos faced off across from one another. Vincent thought it over for a moment, and then just fired his gun into the ceiling. The Xenos began to fire upon one another, one of the Howlers tackling a satyr and ripping out his throat with those pointed tusks. 2 Howlers were still alive, including the one who had tackled the satyr before he got up, and saw something in the satyr's hand. Vincent ducked behind the recording equipment as the explosion rattled the room. When he looked back out, no one else in the room was alive. Phoenix, get to the roof, he heard Mach say, and quickly moved forward. For some reason, he didn't want to leave the body of the preacher behind, as it might disappear once he was out of the room. But as he heard screams and another explosion shook the building, he got moving. There weren't any other security personnel rushing towards his position, which was good, but he saw females of various species screaming as they carried what looked like clothes and other personal belongings out of their various rooms and down the hall. He grabbed one by the arm as she exited her room. It was a Vernek, who looked at him with wide eyes as she dropped an armful of jewelry onto the floor.
Don't kill me!
I'm not here for that. I only kill criminals. Where's the way to the roof? She shakily pointed past him towards a service door, and he let her go, running towards it. When he looked back over his shoulder, she was picking up the jewelry, so he figured she wasn't too shaken up. There was a short stairwell up to the roof, and, as he came out, he saw 5 howlers setting up what looked like some sort of AA emplacement. Get the battery in place! They're coming around again! One was shouting. He aimed his magnum with both hands and shot one of the crew in the back. The others turned and tried to scatter, but he caught the second in the clavicle. The howler spun around and landed with a thud, face first onto the gravel up on the roof. The third was in the gunner's seat, trying to lower the emplacement towards Vincent, but being a sitting target made it all the easier for Vincent to shoot him in the head. Vincent finally had to duck behind some sort of vent or AC unit, as the other 2 began to shoot at him. He waited until both of them stopped firing, and leaned out to see each of the Xenos reloading their weapons. Rookie mistake. He fired on the first, but the round went a little wide, grazing the creature's shoulder. The Xeno howled just before Vincent put the next round into his chest. He took aim on the last and pulled the trigger, only to hear click. He'd forgotten to reload the shot he'd fired to set off that Satyr Howler standoff. Fuck! He had to lean back around the AC unit when the Xeno started firing again. Before he could reload, however, one of those dragonfly-type craft flew in low overhead and dropped off a squad of Mock's Silver Satyr. The Xeno couldn't change his aim quick enough, and quickly got cut down in a hail of energy fire. Shade, we're here to secure the building. Your transport is incoming, the squad leader told him, before they rushed down the stairwell he'd used to get up here. He was expecting another dragonfly, but instead saw what looked like a standard patrol craft swoop in. He quickly ran over to it, jumping up into the main hold before it started to lift off. He saw more of Mock's commandos advancing on the estate down below, while howlers fired back on them. Screaming civilians were scattering this way and that. Then Vincent spotted a familiar figure down below. It was the security chief. A howler near him went down, dropping his weapon. The howler started to move towards it, and Vincent whispered under his breath, "Don't do it. Don't you fucking do it!" But the howler ignored the weapon, and picked the wounded howler up instead, hauling him away from the fight in a fireman's carry. Vincent sighed and hoped he'd made the right choice regarding that particular Xeno. Not like he could have made the shot from this distance in a moving craft anyway. "Handler, I thought you didn't have anyone in this area." "I don't have any teams, no. That craft is one of the Council's private transports. They're in a private session, however, so they don't need it right now." "I'm guessing they want to debrief me." "First, you're heading to the Supreme Chair's estate. A certain official wants today's memories classified immediately." That would be Mock. Vincent was curious about the data device in his pocket that he'd taken from the hostile satyr earlier, but then he remembered something. "Can you have chocolate and booze delivered to the estate when I get there?" What? Why?" "Can you?" "Yes, I suppose." "Good. I'll need it, but I don't have time to explain." "All right, then." Vincent had all the time in the world to explain. He just wasn't going to. No way Cavazor would understand why he was planning on giving that stuff to one of the criminals inside the Supreme Chair's private prison. He kept looking at the device in his hand, and idly wondered if that art thief bird knew how to break encryptions.